This week at work, I came across an individual in a long discussion around how to get the business from probably in dollar terms about $120 million to his very ambitious target of $300 million in the next 3 years. And given the state of the economy and given the state of geopolitical events and all the uncertainty that exists in the economy, well, what is it, I asked, that would get you from where you are to where you need to be? And of course, the conversation immediately went to one of the biggest incumbent players. And I said, how did they get to where they got to? And he turned on and he said to me, it was through the relationships they have and own. And he looked slightly dismayed in using that term. And I said, you seem bothered by it. And he said, well, we don't have those relationships. And within that sentence alone was the evidence of a mindset that some of us might have, a valid mindset, very much so, but it's a limiting mindset. Because the assumption that if you don't have relationships, you can't grow, valid assumption. But if you don't own the relationships because the incumbent owns the relationships, do you have to sit it out and wait for the incumbent to move on? Or do you ask yourself the question, what I need to do to dislodge those relationships and point them in my favor? And we had a number of discussions around that. For example, in any business that you're selling to, it's likely you're going to be dealing with one individual or have one individual put in front of you that occupies the functional role relevant to what it is that you are buying. So typically it could be the operations individual, the business unit manager, it might be the finance manager, but there's typically one individual that you're typically told to deal with whenever engaging with a potential client. Yet what's very evident is that increasingly now more than ever before, buying decisions in larger organizations are made through committees. If you don't have the right relationship, then who are the other influences in the buying decision? And could you find an approach that would reach out to them in a fashion that they become champions or ambassadors of you and your service into that relationship, opening up the doors for the relationship to emerge to begin with the key representative responsible for buying your product or service? Working hard is one thing, but working smart adds to working hard, compounding its efforts that will be able to yield those outcomes for you. Understanding that organizations buy through committee more than through the identified representative of the organization for which you are told to engage with will be a limiting mindset. But if we know, for example, the business unit manager that you are selling your product or service to is going to be backed by finance, is going to be backed by procurement, is going to be backed by possibly someone in supply chain, forging relationships with those individuals as a way in through demonstrating a keen interpretation of how your service or product supports their ambitions within their functional roles as finance or procurement or supply chain, starts to create a warmth, starts to create an understanding, starts to create an interest. And very often, those are the seeds that you typically need to get a favorable relationship and engagement going with the key individual responsible for buying your product or service. Think about it. Being driven is one thing. Working hard is another thing. But doing it smartly and doing it patiently and doing it consistently will allow you to enfold an organization, its representatives, and eventually have the relationship you need for the deal to be done emerging. Until next week at work, have a good day.